What we want to do here is to look a little deeper into what sociology is and what it can reveal about the world. We begin with a story. In 1722, a Dutch fleet in the South Seas spotted a previously unknown island. Coming closer, two strange things stood out. First, the island was completely treeless and barren, inhabited by about 100 malnourished people who were living in caves because they had no wood to build houses. Second, they saw hundreds of huge stone statues up to 10 meters in height and weighing 80 tons. Of course, you know I'm talking about Easter Island, so named because the Dutch discovered it on Easter Sunday. The mystery of Easter Island was, of course, the disconnect between these incredible statues and the miserable inhabitants of the island. One theory, popular as recent as the 1960s, was that only aliens could have created such huge sculptures. The real story of Easter Island is both tragic and fascinating from a sociological perspective. Pollen samples from the island's volcanic crater lakes have revealed that it was once lush and heavily forested. So, what happened here? What we have come to learn is that the island was settled in roughly the 5th century by migrants from nearby islands. Over the next 500 years or so, the population swelled to 10,000, which is a lot for an island that is a little smaller than current-day Washington, D.C. Land was cleared for fields, and Easter Island eventually split into clans. Each clan had a chief. The tradition was that each clan would honor its ancestors by carving statues from the soft volcanic rock and set them up on platforms near the shore. Over time, the competition over statues got stiffer and the statues got larger, requiring more wood to be cut and more rope and more human power to haul and raise the statues. They were cutting the trees faster than they could grow back, and the island was eventually completely deforested. Without trees, they couldn't build fishing canoes, and the fertile soil washed away. It was in this state they were discovered by European explorers, starving. Some had resorted to cannibalism. Now, if we look at Easter Island as an experiment, what do we see? First, unrestricted population growth. Second, reckless use of resources. And third, catastrophic environmental destruction. If any of these variables are sounding a little bit familiar, it's because we are now engaging in a similar experiment, but on a global level. Here's a chart that maps the Earth's biocapacity, its ability to regenerate resources, against the ecological footprint of us, Homo sapiens. That means what resources we need to live like we do. And you don't have to study this too closely to see that we've been in the red since roughly the 1970s. But let's get back to the poor Easter Islanders. Why did they do this to themselves? Imagine being the person who chopped down the very last tree. They must have been quite aware of what they were doing, and they did it anyway. What canceled out the evidence of their eyes was the belief that their chiefs would take care of everything. And by the way, isn't this more than a little like us in the face of ongoing climate change? The bottom line here is that looking only at the behavior of individuals doesn't unlock the mystery of why Easter Islanders did themselves in. We can only begin to make sense of it by focusing on their social behavior, in other words, the beliefs they all shared. Which brings us to the doorstep of sociology, the systematic study of human behavior in social context, to quote the textbook. Our focus in sociology is social behavior, how people behave as members of a group. What we mean by groups will become more clear over the next few weeks, but for now, let's just say it's people who share beliefs in common. That could be the Easter Islanders. It could just as easily be you as college students or me and my fellow professors. Which brings us to the idea of the sociological imagination, courtesy of American sociologist C. Wright Mills. He came up with this term to describe a key tool of the sociologist. The sociological imagination involves developing an awareness of the relationship between the individual and the society they live in. The idea here is to push us past both purely individual and common sense explanations, to help us see the connections to the social context. A good example is poverty, specifically why poor people stay poor. In the USA, the idea of the American dream is that everyone can make it if they try. Yet, we know that only 4 out of every 100 people escape poverty. Some common sense understandings of poverty focus on the characteristics of the poor. They supposedly lack the motivation to improve themselves. One idea that resurfaces periodically is that of a so-called culture of poverty. However, research by sociologists pushes past these ideas and proves that poor people are kept poor. Their chances for social mobility are suppressed by institutions that work against them.